Right now, it is time for us to head north, young man, young woman. Not that far north, South County, Massachusetts, of course. It is time for the Berkshire Edge on air. Now, you can find the Berkshire Edge at theberkshireedge.com. That is theberkshireedge.com. And they are just 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You'll find all the news of interest to South County and surrounding areas at the Berkshire Edge. We'll welcome in Marcy and David right now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Say, I would like to extend our coverage to the world.
Well, you do,
Why limit us to,
We do, It's funny. Whenever I check the stats every once in a while, we don't pay for the real. Well, hang on a second here.
We don't pay
hang on,
for
guys.
what?
Hang on a second, guys. You still there?
Yeah.
Okay, the power went off here, and the generator's back though. It takes about 5 or 10 seconds for everything to kick in.
Yeah.
Do you guys pay the electric bill?
Well, no, it's back on, obviously. I see there's a company doing work out front. We'll see what happens. Well, anyways, it's strange because even though it's dark, it's light out there. Where this studio is located, even though there's windows to the left and right, it gets pitch black in here.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I just have to sit here and say, okay, I count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and the generator is on.
We didn't lose you, yeah.
No, that's because the phones are there. Thank God.
The phones are there, right.
All right.
Right.
So anyways.
Can you see? I mean, you have power now.
Oh well, the generator kicked in. The generator kicked in. So.
Yeah, I wonder why you lost power.
Well, I'll find out sooner or later.
Yeah, right.
But who knows? All right. So
no
anyways.
one can hear us.
Yeah.
If the power is off, then nobody can listen to us on the radio.
Well, yes, they can. Like I said, that's why the generator kicks in within 5.5 seconds.
Right.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's a big 4-cylinder engine, is what it is down in it, almost like if you're out in the farm. But let's get to the Berkshire Edge.
Okay.
And the first story that we'll talk about is a story I read about. And it's funny. I read about it and the local take that you have from, of course, the Berkshire Edge and locally. And that story about, I think it was 3 or 4 days later, also appeared in the New York Times. And
in the Guardian.
Yeah.
In the Guardian.
And the Guardian as well.
Across the pond.
And it's all the Great Barrington Declaration. It's funny. I had some people contact me and say, "Do you know where that was written?" So I said, "Well, I would presume it was written. I presume it was written in Great Barrington, in Massachusetts." So I said, "Yeah, I think it's Great Barrington, Massachusetts." So.
Well, it's funny. I just was remarking to David that here in Great Barrington we have these two institutions. We have something called the AIER, which is what's does that stand for? The
American Institute for Economic Research.
Economic Research, right? And then we also have, on the other side of town, we have something called the Schumacher Center for New Economics, which is, which has developed a local currency and is much more sort of community-oriented. I'm sure they would kill me for describing them like this, but it's a completely different perspective on economics. But AIER is a kind of libertarian organization, a free market think tank.
Funded, they say, by the Koch brothers.
Right. And others of their ilk.
I was going to say, it's not only the Koch brothers. It's you got it exactly right. Others of their ilk. Okay. And now, folks, that's not. Don't take that as a negative term. Ilk is like others.
No, that's right.
Ilk means
we're insulting the ilk here.
Other of their persuasion.
Ilk means
of their persuasion.
That's right. Ilk means someone with like thought, like views. That's what.
Right.
But sometimes you just have to explain that to people in these politically charged times.
No, that's true, and I am being much more partisan than I probably should be.
Well, no. But it's. I always like to explain it because I get run up the flagpole and down at least 3 or 4 times a week for this.
Right.
So anyway, but this was an interesting story nonetheless.
It's very interesting because they had a meeting about 10 days on October 3rd. They had a private forum that included epidemiologists, economists, and journalists.
Right. Well, we should say that they actually have their headquarters in a big stone mansion in a state
Beautiful.
around the corner from us, actually.
Yeah.
And this organization is over 100 years old. I mean, they've been around a long time.
That's right.
Yes, and also I think they are quite well respected. I mean, they have a big following. They put out materials for the general public, which I know are widely read across the country, on how to manage money and how to think about investing. And so they're not a one-issue organization, although they are, they are a free market kind of libertarian organization. But I mean, and mostly people locally have no idea who they are. They're just this thing up on the hill that people know is here. But most people in Great Barrington don't know anything. Really don't know who they are or what they do. But
they do now.
They do now.
I was going to say
at the end of this conference, they put out something called the Great Barrington Declaration about the COVID-19
pandemic. Yeah.
And their conclusion was that shutting down is dangerous not only to the economy but also to health. And the best thing would be to let the pandemic run its course until we all developed herd immunity, which is a strategy that relies on a large portion of the community becoming immune to the disease by a large portion of the community getting the disease and
dying
and developing an immunity. But in the process, in order to develop herd immunity, a large number of people will die. A very large number of people will die.
It's interesting though. I kind of took their declaration, not necessarily that they're for herd immunity, but they're not for economic lockdowns. The herd immunity probably comes along as a follow-up, but it really is more they're against economic lockdowns and shutdowns. Right.
They also have said, because this is the second article that we've written about them. I mean, they've also said that that there was a health hazard to this economic lockdown, and that children are not getting their inoculations for other things, that it's unhealthy psychologically for people, so it has devastating economic, medical, social, and cultural impact. And they believe, especially on the poor and the struggling. So it's not an entirely insensitive declaration.
No.
But what's happened is that they now, they started to advertise that they had something like 26,000 signatories to this, and they started listing who these people were. And, I think it was The Guardian first that came out, that realized that some of these names were fake. A lot of them were fake. I mean, they were odd names, and so what the AIER did was it took down the list, but continues to claim the numbers.
Well, if people see the story, I made the mistake, but it's not a mistake. But if you really want to find, you can click on and you can see the whole declaration. But be prepared, because there's a whole lot of reading in that declaration.
Yeah.
It's not a one paragraph press release.
Right.
Well, we have a link to it on our site.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I read it. To be quite honest with you, so that was an interesting story though that I saw right off the bat at the Berkshire Edge. So that is a way.
But we also have in the same, by the same token this week. I don't know if David, if you put this on our list, but we also have an article which we have once a month on a local business that's using Berkshires, which is a local currency that was invented or created by the other organization, the Schumacher Center, and I guess it's actually in South Egremont, not in Great Barrington, in the next town over. And what the Schumacher Center has done with it. And so we have a feature once a month of a local business that accepts Berkshires, and Berkshires is a very interesting. It's a local currency. It's paper money
in various denominations.
Yeah. And if you use it, you save 10%. I mean, in other words, you buy it for 90 cents on the dollar and use it as a dollar. The banks who have agreed, who
issue it,
have agreed to this arrangement, and it is intended to stimulate local business and patronage of local business. And so we have articles on the local businesses that accept Berkshires. And so it's very interesting that we are this little hotbed of economic thought right here in this little corner of the Berkshires.
Well, we'll also remind people that Bard has a campus high in Great Barrington as well. So
yes,
that's true.
It really is a diverse. We live in a very diverse community.
Diverse area, right?
Yeah.
On to story number 2, and that is your writer Sheila Clary, a piece on the implications of the nomination for the Supreme Court of the United States.
Right.
Oh yeah, Sheila is an excellent writer. And she really, she's a rapier-like intelligence, I must say. And so she really explains she has some, as she says, some thoughts on Amy Coney Barrett. And it's quite an assessment of this candidate and who she is really, and I recommend it to your listeners. But Sheila's father was a lawyer, so she has some experience in dealing with these kind of legal issues, and so she is of course not. She doesn't favor this particular candidate, but she has a really interesting assessment of her candidacy and the kind of America that she thinks, an unrealistic view of America and its citizens that Amy Coney Barrett represents.
And she's talking also, about, for example, a family of 2 gay women who have adopted 2 black daughters, and these are, this is the kind of family that she feels the Supreme Court, with the addition of Amy Coney Barrett, would be very dangerous to. That there would be, if given their choice, there would be no gay marriage, there would be racism, there would be, so she's taking a very personal, and there would be no medical care. She's taking a very personal perspective on Amy Coney Barrett, which of course resonates with us. Although it apparently is a done deal.
Well, I think
we should all be aware of what's coming.
There's this is developed where the Supreme Court picks have always been political, not heavily political, but always lean one way or the other.
Yeah.
But it's just intensified with the tribalization of people in this country, and there is nothing anybody can do about it. Barack Obama said it as he was leaving office. Elections have consequences. Folks, this is the most major consequence you see when one party gets to pick, for one way or the other, 3 members of a 9-member Supreme Court. It's just you've got to, I hate to say grin and bear it, swallow the bile and see what happens on election day and beyond, because Normally, the tempo that swings heavily to the right or to the left always comes back to the center. Sometimes it takes years, and sometimes,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
I
it
would be
Well,
happy
listen,
with
I can remember my grandfather deploring, who was died in the wool Republican, deploring the picks to the Supreme Court that FDR made during the 1930s, which he made made the court a very liberal court, and so I mean, in a sense, we're on the other side of that.
That's it. It's the give and take of politics and the Supreme Court, and may we all live long enough to see it come back more to the moderate side now.
Yeah, right.
Let's move on to the next story, and that is a profile of a North Adams filmmaker who's documenting COVID-19.
Oh yes, this is pretty interesting. Our writer Hannah Van Sickle wrote about a filmmaker who is interviewing people who are suffering from COVID-19, and it's a really stunning story, I think, about what this disease has done to society and to a culture,
and he's also at the same time documenting the opioid crisis.
Yeah, the opioid crisis. Yeah,
in Berkshire County. So,
which is a twin. Yes, these twin diseases that are afflicting us, unfortunately, simultaneously. But it's a really fascinating story.
Right. And it'll be a very interesting.
Yeah, I can hardly wait to see the film.
Right.
Yeah.
It's actually more, I think, about the opioid crisis than it is about COVID-19. But no, it's both. Anyway, it's if there was ever an issue that required universal health care, I mean, here we have the example of two pandemics that we have in locally that.
Well, not just locally, but
yes, but we're documenting it locally.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, I want to. You've got another great feature, and I was wondering.
We have all great features.
You're Carol Owens. It's the history about Great Barrington's Main Street.
Yeah,
is she writing also in that history of Great Barrington's Main Street, the brand new history, which started with all the street project and everything like that?
Well, no, but she was talking about how even back when the Main Street was first being developed,
right.
Everybody was complaining about how expensive it was to take care of Main Street, and so she said this is nothing new. And actually, Main Street in Great Barrington wasn't Main Street. I mean, the primary street was something called Pixley Street, and it was up a little bit north of the big brown bridge over the Housatonic, and where the cemetery still is. I mean, that was the main street of town. And then somehow, little by little, what is now Main Street along the river became the center of town. Well, they built a courthouse, which of course makes it the center of town, which I think is where the town hall is now. But it was a very narrow street. Originally, what is now Main Street was a path through the woods. And
but they had a parking problem.
They had a parking
just as they do now.
They did.
People were complaining. There were 100 wagons and carriages parked on Main Street, creating a kind of traffic jam.
So they had to widen the road, and they had to clean up the mud.
What about the horses?
And they had to clean up
manure.
After the horses.
Well, you
of
see, the more history changes, the more it stays the same. Now, instead of having cars,
right.
you have sport utility vehicles that are flying.
That's right.
The point is that
yeah, that's right.
with horsepower.
you can safely say in this instance it was ever thus.
It was ever thus.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, read this.
Carol, by the way, I can recommend. You can go to our site at any some of these columnists that we have, like Carol Owens, is she does these wonderful historical she connects the history to the current time, and all of these are available on our archives, and she's a great writer.
And she does it every Tuesday.
And
they're always wonderful. People
and she has an enormous reservoir of stories like this. So.
All right. Well, we've got about 3 minutes left, and we've got a couple of stories. Let's go on to the Clinton Church Restoration Project.
Oh, yes. Well, that's very interesting. The Clinton Church Restoration Project started last night, and it will be 14 Tuesdays, not all consecutive because they're interrupting for the election, and I think they're going to interrupt for one other event. But it's a community reading of W.E.B. Du Bois' Souls of Black Folks.
Yep.
It's a Zoom meeting. You can just go to the Clinton Church Restoration website, and you can find a link to it. I watched part of it last night, and it was very interesting. A lot of very interesting black historians and sociologists talking about and reading. They're reading chapter by chapter of Du Bois' book and discussing it. So this is really very interesting and exciting.
And finally, the Williams College faculty member who's won the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Yes, right.
Yes, Louise Glick.
And she's local.
Yes, she lives. She lives in Williamstown.
Right.
She teaches at Williams College, and she won the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Yes.
And so we have a really Sarah Wright wrote a really sweet profile of Louise Glick and her poetry for this to celebrate her this honor that she received. It's quite wonderful.
Yes. So we should remind your listeners that we update the Edge daily. I mean, this is a daily newspaper, online only, and
nightly too.
And nightly,
we do it at
daily
night too.
and nightly. And if they want to know what's going on, they can sign up for a free daily email, which will tell them everything. I'll give them a list of everything that's new. So they should also tune in on Wednesday mornings and listen to us discuss. But they can have this news delivered to their inbox every morning for free.
And the easiest way they can find it is if they listen to our podcast, just go to robinhoodradio.com, click on On Demand, click on the Berkshire Edge on Air, and every Berkshire Edge is there, and you can click on links directly to the stories. And once you're to one story, of course, you can then go explore the rest of the sites. So.
Yes, right, because
and a very extensive calendar too of all the events.
Very extensive calendar, and now we have our magazine online as well, which we're about to update in November, and we will have another set of very interesting articles.
All right.
Including we will be launching a wedding section on the Edge. Since the Berkshires are now a wedding destination area, so there's always something new, and don't wait until Wednesday.
All right, guys. We will speak
every day.
We will speak to you.
Every day.
We will speak to you guys next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
That is the Berkshire Edge on Air, but of course you can find them also at the BerkshireEdge.com.